Chris, I hope all is well in your world. Welcome into the game in Tuscaloosa.
Hey, Ryan, it's good to be with you. We're just hanging in there, trying to social distance.
Sure. It's a little harder for some, a little easier for some. I guess when you talk about your responsibilities of communicating with coaches, none of that changes. I'm curious, when you're talking with these guys and you're listening to these coaches, how are they managing all this different social distancing and their everyday life that has been discontinued for a little bit?
Well, they're spending a lot of their time on Zoom, video conferencing with players and coaches and on the phones. It's different for a lot of them because, this time of year, most of them will either be wrapping up spring practice or in the middle of spring practice. That's the biggest difference is they're not out on the field. They're not in the film room. They're not in staff meetings. They're doing all these things as much as they can anyway via Zoom, teleconference, and trying to talk to each other and keep engaged with their players as much as possible. I think that's the trickiest part with my conversation with coaches is you're used to having the players there on campus, meeting with nutritionists, meeting with the strength coaches with them every day. You're meeting with them, you're practicing with them on the field. Now all of a sudden everybody's out, scattered about, and that's the hardest thing, and probably the thing that you just can't keep your finger on players because nobody's on campus.
Chris, when you look at this disadvantage of not having spring practice, who does this hurt the most when you look around the SEC or in college football? I don't want to tie you into one question, but, as you look at new coaches, new coordinators, who does this hurt the most?
Probably anybody that's got a lot of new coordinators or quarterbacks that are going to be playing for the first time, especially young quarterbacks that haven't played much. I think any combination, Ryan, of a quarterback that hasn't played much with a new coordinator, or maybe you're transitioning into a new offense, and same with defense, a defensive coordinator that's for the first time taking over a unit. And again, if he's making tweaks to the defense, and I think probably what this is going to do is force teams more than ever to cut back on what they do defensively, offensively, and I think the more the teams that are younger, say at the quarterback position, or do have some turnover on their staff, are probably going to have to do that even more. Cut back what they're doing, certainly early, because you haven't had the time to prep for it. You haven't had the time to go through spring ball. And the summertime is such an important time when you just look at it from an offensive perspective for quarterbacks and receivers to get out of the field and do 7-on-7 and throw routes. And form continuity, chemistry in the pass game. And I can't tell you over the years having covered college ball and talking to quarterbacks and offensive coordinators, and granted the coaches can't be out there, but how much they gain from being out there in the summers with their receivers, and just sort of forming that chemistry. It's so important in the pass.
Chris, does this favor those teams that, it always does when you talk about the talent level, but at the end of the day, if you do simplify the offense and the defense, does this just go back to favor those teams who are loaded with talent, like a Clemson, like an Alabama, like an Ohio State, that their roster is just supplemented with great talent?
Yeah, and I think it always does. I think anytime you have, the cream always rises to the top, as the cliche goes, but when you have less time to prepare, less time on the practice field, less time to teach, and go through these things, I think, the talent is probably the greater chance the talent's going to win out. And I think you see that anyway. Look at the playoffs the last few years, Ryan. It's been pretty much the same usual suspects, right? Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, LSU last year. Clearly was just unreal how good they were, and offensively they were just a machine. But it's I think if we get into, I don't know, the summer and say the kids start getting on campus in July and you have maybe a couple weeks getting ready in the preseason, I would say even more so then because you just haven't been around. So let's say the kids come back, the players come back in July, and I hope that happens. Then you're going basically all of, the season ends in January. You're going 6-7 months essentially, not really doing anything with them. You had some off-season workouts in February and January, conditioning type things. But as far as coaches being with players and being 11 on 11, it's going to be a difficult transition for a lot of people.
Chris, you've been around this game for a long time. You talk to a lot of different people. You've got sources in all different parts of the college football arena. What's your confidence that college football will get started? And I'm not asking you to be a scientist or epidemiologist and predict vaccines and all that. But what's your confidence that we'll play the game, whether we start at 143 days away from Alabama USC or we started in October? What's your thought process?
I can only tell you what I have gotten, what I have gleaned, gathered from the people I've talked to, coaches, ADs, people in and around the college football world, and they all are pretty confident that there will be a season. Now, nobody could tell you when it's going to start, what it's going to look like, or maybe fewer games, how much prep time that the players will have to get ready. I know this: player safety and the well-being of players will be at the forefront of whatever happens. They're not going to ask players to come on campus and then be ready to play a football game in 2 weeks. It's not fair. It's not going to happen, nor should it happen. You've heard scenarios about, well, maybe they'll play next spring. Well, I don't know how realistic that is. I know that's maybe been something that has been discussed. I don't get a lot of people telling me they think that's a real possibility, because think of it in this manner. Let's say you play in February, March, and April, and the playoff games or whatever were in early May. What's that do then to the 2021 season? I mean, you're going to bump up that close to the 2021 season. It's going to start late August. You got kids coming off a long season. In some cases, kids coming off injuries, recovering from injuries. And if we're talking about safety of players and well-being, I don't see any way that that's realistic, nor do a lot of the coaches that I've talked to think that is. So I think that scenario of all the scenarios would be a last resort. But football at the collegiate level is such an important part of universities, the athletic programs, the communities, that I think every effort will be exhausted to play college football. I mean, think about a place like Tuscaloosa where you live. If there's no college football season, what does that do for the restaurants, the bars, the hotels? What's it do for the campus, the university there? The money that's generated from college football. The sports. People talk about, and listen, football coaches make a ton of money. Coordinators now make an outrageous amount of money. But when you look at what football does to the other sports, the smaller sports, the university, the community, the money that it brings in, I think we're starting to see now why a lot of these guys make that kind of money. But I do think there will be a season, Ryan. I don't, just again based on people I've talked to, but so much of that's going to be up to when kids get back on campus. When are students starting? Just about everybody has shut down classes, at least in the first part of summer school, to just online. And it's hard for me to see a scenario where we're playing football anywhere and there's still no students on campus.
Chris, as you're sitting there going through that, we had Greg Byrne on a couple of weeks ago, and we asked him, and I got to give credit back to Mike Bianchi there at the Orlando Sentinel. He had quoted Scott Strickland of 85% of the budget's made up for football, and I followed it up and asked Greg Byrne here on the air, and he said that's pretty much a pretty good figure for us too, 85%. I mean, think about the budget of the athletic department. And as you were sitting there going through the devastation, if there's no football for Tuscaloosa, we would be in a world of hurt. I mean, economic disaster here. And it would be the same across a lot of college towns.
Well, I talked to Ross New York, the AD at Texas A&M. He gave me those same figures for A&M, that about 80, I think he said 80 to 85% of their revenue is generated by football. So I think that's probably pretty standard across the board. But all of us, those in my profession, at ESPN, at Fox, you see the people that, in the media, television, everything. If there's no television revenue for colleges, it has far-reaching impact, or it would have a far-reaching impact on a ton of people and a ton of different professions, businesses, small business owners, larger businesses, everybody. And that's why, again, I think everybody is going to do what they can within reason, and as long as it's medically safe, to have a college football season.
Chris, I want to take you to the final question and go to an article here on ESPN.com. We talked about it a couple of days ago, how one Rich Rodriguez decision changed Alabama. I'm curious, how close do you think it was for Rich Rodriguez looking at the University of Alabama and actually saying, yes, obviously we remember the story. I mean, the Tuscaloosa News has got a printout of, they'd already went to the print, and, Rich Rodriguez was coming. But talk about the article and kind of talk about what you know from Rich Rodriguez, because I thought it had some great quotes in the article.
Yeah. I didn't know. So did the T News actually write a story, or they just had it ready to go?
No. I mean, it was, and I've still got a newspaper copy. Yeah, the Rich Rodriguez was printed across the Tuscaloosa News. And I guess
he was coming.
Yeah, that he was coming. Yeah. So, and then that was printed out because it hung in a studio of mine here in Tuscaloosa at another station, and it was a gigantic Tuscaloosa News printout. Yeah, Rich Rodriguez.
Yeah, I knew there were several reports, and when I talked to Rich Rod we talked a couple weeks ago, and he obviously was aware that there were several reports out there that he had agreed or had told Mal that he was going to be the next coach, and he said he was very close. I think when he left New York City, I think in his mind that he was probably going to be the head football coach at Alabama. He's still adamant to this day that he never told Mal, "Hey, we got a deal. I'm coming. It's I'm definitely going to be the coach." With these things, as these things continue to play out, agents continue to talk to AD. And I think his agent continued to talk to Mal, but he said that he had to go back to West Virginia and talk to some people. I think there was a press conference he had to be at the next day too for a Gator Bowl function, because they were playing the Gator Bowl that year. And then he flew from there and then back to West Virginia. I think it's there where he was with a lot of the heavy hitters of West Virginia that promised him basically the moon: coaches' salaries, upgrades, facilities, a lot of different things. That he decided, I'm going to stay at West Virginia. He said that was really difficult to call Mal. He had a lot of respect for Mal, and it's Alabama. But it's hard now for a lot of us to look back. That was, 13 years ago, and look at it this manner. But Alabama was not in a good way at that point.
No.
I mean, Bama had gone, 10, 12 years. It's just been mediocre at best. Had a lot of change, hadn't been very good. People felt like there were too many cooks in the kitchen there. Just a lot of people just didn't feel like that was the best, healthiest place to go coach football at that point. And West Virginia, on the other hand, had won 11 games for 3 straight years. And he had a great football team coming back. In fact, if they don't blow it against Pittsburgh that next season, they play for the national championship. West Virginia did. So, when you sort of go back and you look at it, take a deeper dive, it makes a little bit more sense than it does now. Even he was sort of laughing at himself. I know, how could I turn down Alabama? But I think it was definitely close. I think it's something that, again, after they met in New York City, I guess it was, the 6th that they met, or 7th, I can't remember, December. I think he felt like at that point he probably was going to take the job, but still had a couple boxes he wanted to check with West Virginia. At the end of the day, he decided that he wasn't ready to go down that road. And I think you know this, and everybody there in Alabama knows this. Mal wanted to say at the beginning, Nick was his guy at the beginning. That's who he targeted. And, I think Nick was interested, clearly, but it was early December. They were still playing NFL games. He'd been the coach with the Dolphins that was his second year. He promised Wayne Huizenga, he was in it for the long haul, and just felt like he just, at that point, couldn't go down that road. But as they got later into the month, because I don't think they hired Nick until, the 3rd or 4th of January?
Right.
Does that sound right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
He changed his mind and said, you know what, this is something that I think that fits me better. Terry was much happier, in a college football environment. And to Mal's credit, he stuck with Nick and got it.
Well, and Chris, I promise I'll leave you with this. If you get a chance, read Mal Moore's book. I don't know if you've ever read that, but he kind of tells the other side of the story about how he had a leak in the athletic department and how he kind of led those guys astray that he was looking after this guy, but as Nick was his guy. I mean, that's who he was. And it's really funny to hear that story of he was kind of pressured to go in and Rich Rod. It ties all this together. It's a beautiful illustration. It's a really, really great book.
Yeah, no, I knew that he talked about it in his book, but and too many people have told me that Nick absolutely was his guy from the beginning. But when Nick basically said, "Hey, I'm sorry, just can't do it," obviously any AD, you got to have Plan B, Plan C, whatever. And that's when he went and offered the job to Rich Rod.